What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. And break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward. Well, there's going to be a lot of risk going into tomorrow, looking at some data that's going to be coming out. Just know that I am not a financial planner. Take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends today, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with this market. So, looking at the data and looking at the market so far, I just want to mention that there's quite evidently an bounce attempt that formed right here, especially as we have this bullish divergence on our MACD. We also saw good volume that came in today, so it's a good sign the market's trying to see a rebound. And we may try to continue this temporarily tomorrow morning, but whether or not this continues will depend on some data that's coming out. We do have a lot of data coming, especially as it's going to be April 1st tomorrow, the start of Q2. So I'll break down the data first and I'll talk about the charts in the next couple of minutes. So the first thing to remember is that tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. It's going to be the final day before President Trump announces his new tariffs on what he describes to be Liberation Day. And then we also have data coming out specifically for tomorrow. It's going to be the first big data day. So at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the S&P Global Manufacturing PMI reports. This may cause some volatility, and this is the first piece of data. Then at 10 o'clock a.m., we have a lot of data coming out. First and foremost, we have the ISM Manufacturing PMI, employment, new orders, and prices data. Prices will be very important because it'll give us a gauge about how inflation is looking. And the new orders shows us supply and demand, so that's going to be very important. Make sure you guys are ready for that. I do expect a lot of volatility at 10 o'clock a.m., and then we have the JOLTS job openings and job quits report because the Fed has to monitor inflation and the labor market as spoken by Williams from the Fed today. So Williams gave a speech. I think we also heard Barkin. And we have a lot of these Fed speakers talking about how they have to monitor the labor market just to see how things are looking. And they simultaneously have to look and see what happens with the effects of these tariffs before trying to make these changes. So that's why it's very important to look at this data. I do expect a lot of volatility at 10 o'clock a.m. So get ready, guys. We expect a very, very big move then. That's either going to cause the market to continue to rally, or we could try to push and then get a big rejection, depending on what these numbers look like. So make sure you're prepared for this just to be safe. Now, on top of this, as far as the market's going, we did get a green day. So we started off with the big dump that happened. And I mentioned to everyone that if we could hold support, right, it's still possible for the market to bounce because the VIX gapped up very hard and the gap looked like it was going to fill. And that's what happened exactly. We held support and the market bounced. We did predict this in my second video of the day if you guys rewatch it. So this was correct. But then I warned you guys that, look, even though the market's trying to bounce, there's no guarantee the move is going to last as we have a lot of big catalysts. And the first thing worth mentioning is the fact that we have President Trump who's going to be saying some big things. So, like I said before, April 1st is when we have some data, and there's nothing else too crazy coming out in terms of the tariffs and such. We may have President Trump say some things on the sidelines, but the real big day is going to be April 2nd. For stocks like Tesla, they have deliveries, so keep that in mind. That's another big thing that's coming out. But the big thing for April 2nd will be when President Trump makes these huge announcements, and then whatever he announces with his tariffs, to what extent he wants to increase them, which sectors will be included, and what else does he hint about for the future. That's going to be very, very big, right? President Trump is just giving us some hints here and there. That's causing volatility in the markets. But once he officially says what he has to say, I am expecting a very, very big move in the stock market. And that's why April 2nd is going to be important. Now, President Trump did say some things yesterday and today. He mentioned that he wants to increase tariffs on all countries. So he said all countries, that's his quote. He also mentioned that as far as the future goes, the sectors he's looking at are going to be the auto industry, lumber, and then pharmaceuticals. He was talking about that again. Then he mentioned that it's going to be a big liberation day. It's going to be worth it. I saw headlines saying that some economists disagree. There are economists that agree with President Trump on his tariffs, and there's other ones that disagree. But at the same time, you have to consider that, it depends on what the effects are and things like that. We still don't truly know everything yet. So President Trump is continuing to hype up April 2nd, calling it Liberation Day. And that's pretty much all I heard from him. I didn't hear him say any other things that were new. He's been repeating the same things over and over again about the auto tariffs, how it's going to be worth it. He is saying over and over again, it's going to be worth it. Give it time. It's going to be worth it. And he's just being a little bit more quiet because I think he's getting ready for April 2nd to make those big announcements. Now, yesterday, there were a lot of tensions when it comes to geopolitics involving Russia, Ukraine, and Iran. So President Trump also talked about how he might be increasing the secondary tariffs on Russian oil to about 20 to 25%. And then on Iran, he wants to do the same thing if they don't come up with a nuclear deal. And he's not happy about how the progress is kind of like dwindling a little bit when it comes to like Russia and Ukraine. So he's not really happy about that. So he's been threatening more tariffs and he's getting a little bit angry about that. That's what he said. But since then, he's been a little bit more quiet today. We'll see what he says tomorrow if there is anything else he says. But then April 2nd will be the massive, massive day when he starts making his big announcements. So keep that in mind, guys. Whatever he says will shake the markets. I am expecting a lot of volatility. Now, we have a forecaster known as FundStrat's Tom Lee. I know he's known for being a perma bull, at least from a lot of people. He is saying that he thinks the market might be forming a bottom this week. And he believes that a lot of the worst could be priced in already, and the market may start a big rally, possibly as soon as April 2nd, right after President Trump announces his new tariffs, right? He thinks that we need to wait and see. Obviously, he didn't mention that, but then we've seen so much red that he thinks the bottom could be coming this week. So he's not saying that the market's going to just rally all week. He's saying we could be forming a bottom. And he believes that once a lot of this is priced in, the market will be getting ready for a big move up. He compared this to what happened with the Brexit situation when the UK withdrew from the EU, but then eventually stocks started to rally. And he thinks that the same thing is going on. However, we'll see about that, right? Tom Lee, he's a great guy. He does an amazing work, especially during bull markets, but I can't promise he's going to be correct on this one. We'll have to see about that. So in this case, I would say just be very patient, watch our levels, and we'll see if we end up getting a big bounce after Trump announces his tariffs or not. He could be right, though. You never know, guys. So just keep your heads up and we'll see how it goes. Um, that does not mean we just bounce immediately. We could still see some downside first before anything else. I also want to add that we had a lot of news come out from Goldman Sachs, I believe. So they came out and they are saying that they're going to be looking for reciprocal tariffs to be at an average rate of about 15%. So they think President Trump is going to be announcing these tariffs around 15% for the majority of countries. And then they believe that with the trade war going on, the probability of a recession is now about 35%. They think there's a 35% chance we get a recession in the next 12 months. And then they also mentioned that instead of 2 rate cuts, the Fed's going to give us 3 rate cuts. So they have a different view. Now, we had a bunch of Fed speakers. Jerome Powell spoke not too long ago. We had Daly, we had Kashkari, and then we also had Williams and Barkin from the Fed giving speeches. They're saying that the Fed is going to be very patient, and right now the forecast is 2 rate cuts. Goldman Sachs disagrees and thinks we get an extra one, so we'll see how that ends up going. But they do think that it's important to monitor, the recessionary indicators. 2 more things. Right now, there's not really a whole lot going on with earnings. I say that because when you look at things, we're waiting for big tech earnings in the next couple of weeks. As of right now, we have just very quiet earnings. And then as far as the fear and greed index goes, we have extreme fear making up the majority of sentiment. Momentum is at extreme fear still. It's starting to kind of decline a little bit, so hopefully that continues. And then the put to call option ratio is going up as we're seeing a lot more put buying. This may continue as time goes on, so we have to be very careful. Could this lead to a big short squeeze, or are we going to see the opposite? We'll have to see about that. The VIX started to bounce, but then it got a rejection intraday. So we'll see if it continues. This all depends on so many factors. So as far as the market's going, okay, let's focus on the charts now. We have this bullish divergence on SPY. It looks quite good. We got good volume. This may signify an attempt to go a little higher in the morning. Tomorrow, we might try to either hold these levels or go a little bit higher. We could get very close to like the low 560s, but we have 2 tough resistances near 562 and 565. That's going to be where our EMAs are. And then whether we break 565 or not depends on some factors, such as these very important manufacturing and jobs numbers at 10 a.m. tomorrow. So I can't make promises about how this is going to go, but I do want to give you guys a very, very good analysis of how this is going to look. So let's just say hypothetically, okay, you're a bull, you think the market's going to rally. If you're a bull, you need to see us basically break and hold above 565. If we hold above this 50 EMA here, we could be looking for the 570s to try to reclaim this white trend line right here. So I think that that's the more bullish case if we do hold above 565. It's not that far from where we currently are. Now, if you're a bear, if you're very bearish, you want to see us basically either fail right here at 560 or go a little higher and then fail. And then if we can't hold 555, then we're going to be looking for an attempt to dip all the way down to retest these lows, if not make new lows. New lows could be coming. If 555 fails us specifically, I think there's going to be a risk of us returning to like 550, if not back down to these levels. So there's going to be a risk of downside if we lose 555. So I'd be very careful. Okay, so those are those are your scenarios, and that's what we should be watching for. What do I think is going to happen? Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we start off on a decent end. We kind of like push like this, maybe consolidate up here for a bit. But then once we get this data, the jobs reports, the manufacturing numbers, I'm not too sure about that, guys. If they're not good, we could still come back down and we could see a rejection move. I'm a little bit concerned about that looking at ES and the others. I don't know for sure. I really don't know for sure, but that's what my assessment would suggest. We might reject near these EMAs right here in the low 560s. I don't know for sure though. I do have a gut feeling that could be happening, but obviously I want to be unbiased, and you want to be unbiased when it comes to this data. So make sure you watch your levels just to be safe. I do think we could go a little higher, but there's going to be a risk of rejection if we can't hold above 565, and if we hit these EMAs and come back down. That's looking like the most likely possibility, but I don't know for sure. Like I said, I'm not a fortune teller. I can't see the data, so we have to be prepared to react just to be safe. Now, we didn't get the best of closes on the QQQ, very flat close. We need to hold above 468 on the triple Q. If we do that, we have the potential to push for 474, then eventually back into the 480s. That's the bullish case, okay? The bearish case is going to be that we reject and we can't hold essentially around this 465 area. If that does not hold, we're going to be at risk of returning to 460, if not these lower levels, and then start dumping back down. That is going to be the bearish case. In my opinion, what I think is likely to happen is that as we see stocks like Nvda trying to hold up, we might consolidate in this area, maybe try to go a little bit higher. But I am concerned that the closer we get to like 470, the more likely it is this might actually turn again, and we might see another down move because of what I'm seeing in terms of the trend, number one, and then number two, I'm not as confident about these manufacturing numbers for the month of February. I'm not as confident about those, so I'm going to be a little bit careful. So I don't know for sure what's going to happen. Make sure you watch your bullish levels and bearish levels, but we might start off on a strong end tomorrow, and then we'll see if we get a negative reaction after the data. I just want to give you guys a warning about that. We didn't get the best of closes on the IWM. We should have held 200 and 202 to remain bullish. Had we held those levels, it would have been a lot better. To be bearish, you essentially want to see us lose 198. If that had failed us, then we could be at risk of returning to these lows, right? In my opinion, I think we're going to see something in between that, where we try to push, we try to get back above 200 tomorrow morning. And if we can't quite get there, there's going to be a risk of us returning lower. So please be careful. That's the most likely possibility if we can't hold 200, but we'll see just to be safe. Part of why I'm saying this about SPY and the others is, even though we have a bullish cross in the PPO here, my problem is, look at these EMAs on ES. We have a triple resistance. So we have 5665 as resistance. We have the trend line as resistance near 5680. Then we have 5700 as resistance. So very tough resistance. If you want to be a bull on ES, what you want to see is you want to get back above all of these levels and hold above 5700. If we break that, then yes, that's bullish. This is going to see a big rally. If we can't hold above that level, and if we get a rejection near these levels, we already touched, for example, our 20 EMA, and we kind of rejected a bit, so we're kind of struggling to break that, then there's a risk of us making a move back down, okay, if we can't hold those levels. If you're bearish, specifically if you're bearish, if 5600 fails us, this could be dumping back down to the lows again. So I want to give you guys a heads up about that. My prediction is that we might see a retest in the morning, but then when these manufacturing numbers come in, I'm not too confident we're going to get the best of moves. I don't know for sure. If we do break 5,700, I will turn bullish. If we can't do that, we might hit the trend line, then make a move back down towards this imbalance and actually end up back below 5,600. So we'll see how it goes, but that's the risk I'm essentially looking at. For NQ, we look a little bit more bullish. It might try to go a little bit higher, but that depends on how well we hold above 19,400. And to be really bullish, you want to get back above 19,850. It's possible we get into this range, then we'll see if we get a rejection or not off of that. So please be very careful. If we break 19,850, we're looking for a bounce. If we lose 19,200, we could turn back down. We're in the middle right now, so give it some time to develop. But it's possible we try to go a bit higher, and we might get a rejection if that does not break. So please be very careful. For Bitcoin, Bitcoin is not looking that great. The problem is that we tried to hold above 83,000. We need to break 84,195 to really start pushing. If we can't break this range, so notice how the same thing is happening as ES, right? We hit our 20/50 EMAs on the 4 hour, and we're not doing the best of jobs at holding above them. You need to see Bitcoin get back above 84,195 to remain bullish. If we can't break that, there's going to be a risk of rejections starting to look a little bit weak here. So I just want to give you guys a warning about that there's going to be a risk of us kind of like dipping again if that fails. This also kind of resembles a slanted head and shoulders. So please be careful with Bitcoin. We're not doing the best of jobs at holding up. Look at, for example, Nvda. So it looks decent, but I want to see it break at least 111.5 and 115 to remain bullish. It's possible we try to push towards that level. If we make a higher low here, we could try to get up to about this like 111 to 115 area. But then the question is what happens from there, right? Even if we do go a little bit higher, there's going to be that risk of rejection. So if we hold 109 and if we hold above it, we're looking for 111 and 115 as our targets. If 109 fails us, we could dip back down to 105. It's possible we try one more push move, but if we can't hold above our 20 EMA, it might just be a small push and a rejection to take us right back down towards these lows here. So please be very careful. If we get a rejection, we could return to 105. So I'm just here to give you guys a heads up about that. I anticipate a small push towards like the 111s, and we'll see if we get a rejection after that. So please be very, very careful. For Tesla, we're making higher lows right over here, which is pretty good. But the problem with Tesla is the fact that we have a tough resistance near this 262 to 265 range over here. So that might be a little bit tough for Tesla to break initially. So we'll just have to see how it goes. So it's possible we go a little bit higher and we'll see what the reaction is if we do come down a little bit. But keep in mind for Tesla, none of this volatility matters too much because what matters is going to be deliveries coming out on April 2nd. That's going to either launch Tesla back up like this or cause a massive rug pull. That matters a lot more than these small moves. So just keep that in mind. We'll see how they do with deliveries. I hope for the best for them nonetheless. For Apple, we're trying to make higher lows so we could actually take a trend line like this and kind of like draw it out. So it's trying to hold this trend line. Um, if we can't break this resistance right here around 225, we might return to retest. I do think there's a risk of that because we're forming a wick here and might come down like this to retest this, and we'll see if it bounces again. We might be making a move like this. If we lose this trend line, so if we lose 220, we're looking for 216-ish, depending on the timing we hit this trend line. If that fails us, we could be dumping to these lows again. If we hold this, we could try to bounce, but that's what I'm essentially looking for. To be bullish, you want to break 226. We may come near 222, and then we could reject off that if 220.36 fails us, then we're going to likely retest this trend line. So keep that in mind. For the rest of these, we have other stocks such as like Netflix. I think they're doing a good job at holding up, but I'd still be very careful. Okay, we got this wick right here. To be bullish, you want to get back above 952. We haven't done that yet. I want to get back above these EMAs to be bullish. Maybe it pushes a bit more to test them, but if we can't hold above that, there's going to be a risk of rejection. Obviously, it depends on this data and other factors, so be careful. I do think we try to go a little bit higher, but then if we can't hold above 952, we're going to likely be coming right back down. If we do break that, we're bullish. So we'll see. Please be very careful nonetheless. For MicroStrategy, the same thing is going on. It's rejecting, so it might be coming back down to about this 276 area for a small dip. Still looks kind of weak. It tried to bounce and it's beginning to reject, so it has a risk of downside. Celsius made a great move back up towards the 36s, but there is a slight bearish divergence on it, so it does instigates the potential of a 34.47 to about 32 to be retested, and we'll see if it bounces. We have like a range forming here, but there might be a small dip move coming. For Supermicro, we're trying to bounce. It looks a little bit better. This is following Nvda essentially. So what could be happening is we might come down like this. If we can make a higher low, it's possible it tries to bounce. It goes a little bit higher like this. We need to lose this low around 32 to remain bearish. If we lose that, then yes, I will turn more bearish. I think it comes down tomorrow, but we'll see if we make a higher low or not. So watch for that. For Palantir, looks decent. It's actually a bit more bullish looking, but we need to break above 88s to really bounce. Might come down like this and attempt to rebound. If we break 88, we're going to be more bullish, so we'll see how it goes. Look for a move like that. Rivian is showing resilience. If we could break 12.5, we're more bullish, leaning for 12.8. If we lose 12.1, so we could turn back down. So I'm hoping we hold above these EMAs. So we're looking for a push about 12.5. For SoFi, We're looking a bit more decent, especially as we're forming a higher low right now. I want to see us get back above this trend line, though. I did talk about how this is going to be a big level. If we could hold above this trend line, we're going to be looking for an attempt for the 12s. If not, we could reject. So it's going to be a tough resistance. We might push for this and we'll see if we reject or not. So watch for that very closely. I do think we push towards 11.8 and we'll see if we reject. AMD is not looking that great. It's kind of resembling, super micro. Might come down a bit, and we'll see if it bounces just temporarily for 105. Even if 105 is touched, you guys can see we have like a head and shoulders like structure. So it might just be a temporary move up before it may see a continuation lower. There's still that possibility. Unless we break 105, we could turn back to bullish if we break that. But if we can't, it might just be a small move up, and then we'll see what the reaction happens to be. For ARM, we're looking a bit more bullish. We have a gap to fill, so I do think we push a bit more for 107. So look for a little bit more upside, and we'll see if it rejects. For Coinbase, it looks decent. We're looking at this resistance near 174. And then we also have the support down here around 167. So we'll just have to see how it goes. With this resistance, I do anticipate some downside with Bitcoin towards like 168, and we'll see if it bounces or not. If not, there could be another big move down towards these lows. So be careful. I do see some downside for coin. Amazon's not looking that great, so I like the fact that it's trying to rebound, but we need to hold above 190. If that holds, I see this gap fill for 192.5, so it might go a little bit higher, but then be careful because, like I said before, this could just be a temporary move up. So it looks like it might try to push for 192.5 as long as we can make a higher low and hold above 190. But then we'll see if we reject off that. Could be a bit more upside coming. Meta looks decent. Might try to push for 575 if we could hold above that. We're looking for an attempt to get back up towards like 584. If we end up failing at 575, we hit that and reject, we could be dipping to like 568. So give it some time. For Microsoft, excuse me, we're looking a bit more bullish. I like the fact that we had a nice green bar for today, but we need to get back above 375 if that holds. This gap could fill, so it might go a little higher for like 380. Then we'll see if it rejects or not, but for now, we have potential. For Google, we look a bit more bullish. We could be looking for an attempt to get back up to 157 to 158, and we'll see what the reaction is. I anticipate some upside, so give it some time. For GameStop, we look a bit more bullish. We could slowly push for 23, and we'll see if it rejects or not. AMC's in the middle, might be dipping towards 2.84, and we'll see what the reaction is. DJT is looking okay. It might try to push towards 20, and we'll see what the reaction happens to be. Now, my concern is that the VIX is at support right here around this like 21.6 area. Is the VIX about to hold this support off this like inverse head and shoulders and continue to rally, or is it about to reject? It could go either way depending on our data for tomorrow, but the big factor is going to be President Trump's tariffs. So we'll see how well this ends up holding up. Maybe this does dip a little bit more towards this trend line right here. So maybe there's a little bit more downside coming. And maybe we do end up testing these EMAs before it tries to bounce. So maybe the market goes a little bit higher before a potential bounce. So I do see that risk of us possibly going higher in the markets before getting a potential rejection. So I'm still going to be very careful. The 10-year is kind of flat, and then the dollar's actually flat as well. And it does have a bullish accumulation here, so that tends to be not the best of signs for the markets, forming a cup and handle like pattern. So be very, very careful. So what's my view of the markets? It's possible we go a little bit higher. I could see potential in us to do that. But I am concerned about a couple of things. First off, this data is coming out tomorrow. I'm not too confident it's going to guarantee a big move up. It could cause anything, really. And then secondly, we don't know what's going to happen to President Trump's tariffs in 2 days from now. He may be making some big announcements. Could he cause the market to rally really hard? Will he cause a big rug pull? We'll just have to wait and see. So there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Temporarily, temporarily the market may try to go a bit higher, but then we'll see if we get some kind of rejection move or not. I'm going to be very careful with this as we hit some tough resistance, and we have to break that resistance in order for us to have that confirmation to continue to pump. So we'll see what happens. No matter what the market does today, we have to wait and see what happens, what the reaction is after President Trump's tariffs, and also after the unemployment numbers on Friday. I'm going to be waiting for the first week, and that's going to give us a clear view about what's going to happen next week and beyond. With that being said, I thank you for listening. Please have a good day, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I'll be back tomorrow before market open for another update. Thank you for listening, and peace out.